average person what they know about Egypt, they might mention a lot of things. They might mention how many gods they have, the emphasis on polytheism. They might mention the architecture, such as the pyramids or the Sphinx. Older people might mention mummies or Abbott and Costello. Basic history will tell most people about this, but the real question is, why did these things exist this way? And how is there evidence for their beliefs within their art and architecture? God. This is a sarcophagus of Tutankhamun, a pharaoh who lived in the 1300s BC. You can see evidence of the values of ancient Egyptian society based on the sarcophagus itself. First of all, you notice how heavily they were focused on protecting the pharaoh. This is because the pharaohs were not only seen as godlike figures for these people, but they also wanted to protect any sort of decomposition, because the ultimate goal was for the pharaoh to be resurrected, but not reincarnated as some societies believe. People wonder why they place such value on the afterlife. It was obviously based on the environment of the time. 3,000 years ago in Egypt, it was obviously sweltering hot all the time. People lived harsh lives full of punishment. And at that point, you need to look beyond, like, why are you being punished for this life? So they had to look for the afterlife for answers for that. But it was not just about that, because not only the pharaohs were mummified, the entire society was. Somebody estimates that over 70 million mummies are actually buried in the desert, because originally these mummies were not placed in the ground. Placed in sarcophagus. They were actually just buried within the sand.
The image you see is a carving of Akhenaten and his family. Akhenaten was known as a heritage king. He was the 10th king of the 18th dynasty. He lived at the peak of Egypt's imperial glory. Egypt had never been richer, more powerful, or more secure. The first thing the eye catches when you look at the carving is a figure that seems to be the sun shining on Akhenaten and his family, as if Aten, the sun disk god, was watching over them. Aten is the only god that Akhenaten and Nefertiti, his wife, worship. Aten is known as the creative power. The reason I believe the artist made Aten so emphasized is because I believe it is a scene of childbirth. I believe this because the first thing you see is Aten, the creative power. This gives a clue that something may be in the middle of creation. The next reason I believe it is a birth scene is the figures in the etching are yielding what seems to be newborn babies, with umbilical cords still attached. In the carving, it is as if the artist is comparing Akhenaten and Nefertiti to Aten by showing that they are also creators of life.
Queen Nefertiti, wife of Akhenaten, was a leading figure in Amarna. Her name means the beautiful woman has come. Beauty was the main importance in the society at the time of Nefertiti. Queen Nefertiti had many titles, such as the hereditary princess, great of praises, lady of grace, sweet of love, lady of two lands, and many more. In the statue of woman in Willendorf, the reproductive qualities are greatly emphasized. In the bust of Nefertiti, her neck is greatly emphasized, as are the features of her face. The face was completely symmetrical and, when found, almost intact. The bust is known for its realistic facial proportions. As noticed in the statue, her left eye is missing. The archaeologists don't know if it was lost in the ruins or if it was removed purposely because of an eye infection. Another thing the women of Willendorf and the bust have in common is that they were both made of limestone. In the Paleolithic era, the statue of women of Willendorf represented reproduction and had meaning to the people of that era. In the bust of Nefertiti, it had a great significance to the Egyptians. The bust represented her beauty and how beauty was an importance in that time period. Nefertiti was loved and famous by all of the Egyptians. The bust was important because they copied her statue all over the world and made her famous. The influence was so great that it reached Germany in the 20th century. Hitler described the bust as a unique masterpiece. The bust is well known and is currently in a museum in Berlin.
Okay. The carving found in the Temple of Endura several dozen kilometers north of Luxor. The carving shows something very interesting about ancient Egyptian technology. The image you see here shows a priest, children, God, and a big oval object with a snake inside. This points to my theory ancient Egypt had electricity. In the carving, the painting is holding up what looks like a light bulb. The snake resembles filament like modern light bulbs. The hand inside the oval object is holding the snake resembles isolator, which holds a filament that conducts electricity. Another piece of evidence that points to Egypt having light is a creature with two knives. He is called the light bringer. The children on the bottom of the light bulb, they represent inverse polarity, or the positive and negative of electricity. But how did they come up with this idea of this technology? Did they use it for just light or something else? Many suggest they came up with the idea that when they see the light, they feel the presence of God.
When most people think of Egyptian architecture, they immediately think of the pyramids. However, I think the Karnak temple ruins is of more importance. These ruins can tell us a lot about Egyptian culture. These temples are from the era of Pharaoh Ramses II. The temples are located near Luxor, south of Cairo. The size of the Karnak ruins is over 200 acres. In Humanities, there is a theory of exaggeration. This theory states that whatever is the biggest or most expensive in a society is most important to that culture. Therefore, the size of the Karnak temple complex suggests that religion was important to the ancient Egyptians. There are four main complexes of the temple. The precinct of Amun-Ra is the biggest. Again, this points to the importance of religion because Amun-Ra was essentially the king of gods in Egyptian culture. The temple ruins also suggest that war was a big part of Egyptian culture. There are many carvings of battles being fought in the temple complex to prove this. Another observation that can be made from the temples is that the Egyptians emphasized huge pillars and columns in the temple complex. These pillars and columns can be seen as phallic symbols, suggesting that ancient Egypt was a patriarchal society. The ancient Egyptians emphasized male power by including phallic symbols in their architecture.
One of the most iconic structures known worldwide is the Sphinx. According to archaeologists, the Sphinx was built around 9,500 BC.
With the body of a lion and the head of a human, the Sphinx symbolically combines the power of the lion with the image of the reigning king. This suggests that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs had great power. What it had symbolized to the Egyptian people was it being an idol of the king as a god. The Great Sphinx was 66 feet in height by 19 feet in width, in size, and therefore the structure was a very important icon to their society. The Sphinx was also used as a burial site for the kings at the time. The Egyptian people believed in resurrection, and so the Sphinx was also a gateway to the afterlife and also a way back to life.
Whether it be aliens, gods, or the power of the environment, it is obvious that the complexities of ancient Egyptian societies may be deeper than we can truly understand. It may be that the society is defined by the beliefs that are visible from the things they created. The Egyptian culture may have been a society defined by male domination and war. Perhaps the most notable things about the Egyptians were their emphasis on the power and physical powers of their leaders that promoted these people to godlike or legendary status. It may be that the values of a society can be reflected in how they treated the afterlife. It may be that the values the Egyptians displayed came from something beyond what we can currently comprehend. There may come a day when the average person thinks about the ancient Egyptians and will see more than gods, mummies, and the desert. One day, everyone may see them as complex societies with their own set of values and beliefs, just like our own.